Welcome everybody to the C3PO show. We've been gone for a while. I'm your boy Corey Sullivan. Over there, we got my main man.
Austin Lersten, everybody. How y'all doing?
Good to see you, Austin. I'm over here. We're both in California. I'm over here in Santa Maria, and my man Austin is out there in the beautiful Los Angeles. How you doing, man?
We are keeping Los Angeles fresh out here. This is a perfect time of year, by the way. This is the reason everyone lives in California is for right now.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you can't complain. It's like 70 degrees. Thanksgiving just passed up in the Pacific Northwest, and the Seahawks are dealing with some rain, some cold, probably some snow in the near future. And yeah, we don't have any of that here. So it's a beautiful day. I believe it was sunny today, as it is every day. How was it down south in
I
Cali?
mean, it was like a nice cool 64 with like a little light breeze, sun shining when I wake up, sun setting as we speak. We look outside, beautiful skies. So it's great overall.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
it's a different a skyline or scene out here, especially at night, than in the Pacific Northwest. But we won't keep you guys too long. Just want to talk about Week 13 Sunday Night Football, Seahawks, Philly. I believe we both have the Seahawks winning this game. But before we get to that, talk about the run game, which has been absolutely atrocious for the Seahawks outside of Russell Wilson and the Chris Carson seventh round rookie we had for grand total of 4 games, led our rushing attack for pretty much the whole year. Even when he was injured and out for the year, he still was leading our team in rushing, which goes to show that our guys just haven't been getting it done. Thomas Rawls, usually a healthy scratch or just not playing at all. When he does, ineffective, always dealing with some sort of injury. Eddie Lacy has been terrible, just to say the least. He had a decent game against the 49ers, but didn't even top 50 yards. And Pro Size always hurt. Mike Davis on his way back. Well, what do you see from the run game? Because I'm just not seeing anything positive outside of Russ.
Yeah, I mean, well, there hasn't been anything positive outside Russ. I mean, there was Chris Carson. So if we look at, there's some stats that kind of break down how terrible the run game has actually been this year for the Seahawks. So no one is actually leading Chris Carson in the rushing attack yet. Russ is, of course, but no one besides Russ has more yards than Chris Carson. Mind you, Chris Carson, I think, went out in week 8. Was it 8 or 7? It was one of the earlier weeks in the season. So that's not a good sign. First off, and then if we look at even the average yards per carry for both Thomas Rawls and Eddie Lacy, Eddie Lacy sitting at a nice cool 2.59 a carry. Thomas Rawls at a 2.55 a carry. So it's like you got your choice, you either take terrible or terrible. Just it's just a nice mixture of just awful, awful football. And I was a big Thomas Ross fan when he was coming out. I really liked the way he ran. I liked his attitude. He seemed, we always talk about our type of guys, Seahawks, guys that are Seahawks. He was a guy. I was like, this is a Seahawk. This is a guy who came from nothing, has that no one's gonna stop me attitude, and I just don't know where it went. I don't know what happened. It's really confusing. He was a good young runner, hadn't had a lot of miles on him. Didn't think he was gonna, run down, but that just goes to show you like how grinding the NFL is. These are the biggest dudes in the world trying to take you down, and sometimes some people's bodies I just don't think can hold up. And sometimes maybe it's mentally too. It's you never know what it is, but uh, I was really hoping he would have a great season. He's not doing anything. We have a couple of new guys we're going to try out, see if they can do anything. J.D. McKissick, Mike Davis, but I don't think any of these guys are really doing much to help out the run game for the Seahawks.
Yeah, you're right. Daryl Bevel during his press conference this week gave high praise to McKissick, said that there wasn't anything he couldn't do, and he's the next up in line. He's doing a lot better than all of the other running backs, and we've seen more of him. He can catch in the pass game. He's got the only other rushing touchdown outside of Russ on the team. I believe the only other touchdown offensively outside of Russ on the team. So it'll be interesting to see. But at this point, I'm kind of sick of seeing I don't want to say short, but these smaller running backs on the Seahawks. They just can't seem to stay healthy. We can't depend on them. CJ Pro Size comes to mind definitely when talking about this subject, but Who knows how long McKissic will last? Hopefully he can finish out the year. But even so, I don't think that you have to give McKissic carries. I don't think that you can give him 15, 20 carries per game, the same as, LeGarrette Blount gets with Philly. I don't think that he's that type of back, and I don't think that we're that type of offense. Bevel, he's got people have stopped talking about firing him ever since we've started winning some games and the team has been doing better. But I don't really think it's the play calling. You listen to the press conferences, and if you watch the games, it's not really the play calling. It's Russ creating a play after the play. So, Bevel is getting let off the hook. And fortunately for him, he has been calling pass plays. So Russell has been able to, get out of the pocket and do what Russ does. But it's definitely not the play calling that's gotten the Seahawks out of the tall weeds and, with all the injuries to Sherman and Chancellor and Averill and some of the big names there on defense. It's really been Russ and his broken play ability to make a play, to Doug and Jimmy Graham and all of those guys that, has led the Seahawks to be where they're at. But how do you feel about the offense and what Bevel has been doing or hasn't been doing so far?
So I'm always a guy who likes to give credit where credit is due. If someone has done a great job, I think it's always good to understand that. I mean, it's always good to give praise where praise is deserved, and especially with Bevel. I mean, we've all been highly critical of him, but he is the guy that Russ has learned under. Russ is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I'm not saying I'm the biggest Bevel fan right now just because of this short stint. But I will say that I like that he is getting Jimmy Graham more involved. If we look at our last 7 games, Jimmy Graham has 8 touchdowns. They're just finding ways to make sure he gets the ball in the red zone. We've been waiting for this forever. So I'm glad that it's finally here, but I'm also glad they didn't find out about it and then just abandon it, right? So they actually looked and saw, dang, this what we wanted him in for here for works. Maybe we should do it more often. So I appreciate them doing that. And I will say that they are abandoning the run game, which isn't in Pete's first interest. Pete rarely likes to abandon the run game. So I do appreciate that they've realized that you just have to put the ball in Russell's hands and find ways for him to make plays. He's going to win you games. This is the guy. So, and it's like this is finally the time. We've been waiting for this. Even last year, I think they could have let it go a little bit more. But Russ wasn't. He was injured, so I think they still limited him. But right now, I mean, he has the most pass attempts in the league. So Russ is at the top of his game right now. They're asking him to do everything, make 86% of the yards on offense, and just do whatever it takes to help his team win. And I think Russ wouldn't rather be in any other position. And I mean, another thing we've abandoned is those bubble screens. I haven't seen a lot of bubble screens anymore from Darrell Bevel either. A few more like swing routes to J.D. McKissic, which is just taking advantage of your talent and utilizing it in the best way. And so I really like the direction that the offense is headed, even without a run game. If you can add a guy in there who's even getting 3.5 a carry, just imagine how much better this offense would be as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with you. And to go off what you were talking about, Russ, he said he steps on the field and wants to be lights out every single play. And then when he was asked about potentially being the MVP, he said, I thought, before I tell you what Russ said, I thought that he would say something along the lines where, it's my team around me and, my coaches and all that, which he did. I mean, Russ gave credit where credit is due. He always does. But he said he would be lying if he didn't. So if he said, why do you even play the game if you don't want to be the greatest at the position? Which is also what you want to hear. You want your quarterback to have confidence. You want Russ to be playing at the level that he's playing and to recognize that he is playing great football right now. So I'm happy. I was happy with that. And, what you were talking about, Bevel, I am one that is always highly critical about Darrell Bevel, but he has been doing a decent job. The offense has been moving. He has moved away finally from running the ball and trying to create that type of run game after big plays. So he has been doing a decent job at least. Although I'm not completely happy, I'm not completely content. The offense is moving. But on the other side of the ball, the defense, high praise from everyone around the league about Bobby Wagner finally getting what he deserves. But even more pressure on him now, getting into the game with Philly, going up against one of the top team in the NFL, coming into Seattle, Sunday Night Football. No Cam Chancellor. He's probably done for the year at least. no Cliff Averill done for the year, and no Richard Sherman, all done for the year. So, or not Richard Sherman, Bobby Wagner leading the team in tackles once again, all up with the league leaders in tackles, forced fumbles, making plays. How do you feel about Bobby and this defense against Carson and what he's been doing so far with the Eagles offense?
Yeah, no, I'm loving. I mean, that whole defense. I'm not mad at the position we're at right now. To be honest with you, I think a lot of people are worried about this defense. I still look at all three layers of the defense, and we have potential Hall of Famers for sure, Pro Bowlers, and maybe even All Pros this year. Um, Earl Thomas has been lights out. Has been battling a few injuries. He's got a heel issue he's dealing with right now, but he's been fighting through that all year round. And then we also have in the middle Bobby Wagner playing maybe as the best defensive player in the league. It's hard to come up with a guy this year who's been as consistent as he has, made as many big plays for his team as Bobby has, and just been all over the field. And then up front, Michael Bennett still playing well. Sheldon Richardson has came in and just dominated. Frank Clark has had a few dominant games. So just overall, I feel confident in this defense. I think that they've had some struggles in the past. I think meshing now with this new unit is going to take a little bit of time, but I think this is a great time for it to start. They had a game, they just played against the 49ers. They didn't give up a touchdown until the very last play of the game, which was a meaningless touchdown. That's a great improvement. I think we always forget, even when you play these teams that aren't very good, any team that you can dominate on defense is always going to be a positive thing for your team, gaining confidence going into the important parts of the season. I mean, it's not really just about this Eagles game. I think you can just look at the rest of the 5 games. These 5 games will determine where we're at the end of the year. We're not used to sitting at 7-4. We're used to being out more of the 8-2 route. But it is a different position to be in this year. But I think that these last 5 games, I think that all of them are very winnable against some fun teams. And I think when they call on it, Pete and Russ and Doug, and I think all the great guys on our team who have been there for a long time want to step up to that call, and they'll bring the other guys with them.
I agree with you. I think, the guys that we have in the system, Bobby, Russ, all of those, main characters have been with the system, been with the team for a while. And the thing that I think, we've been losing to some, I wouldn't want to say terrible teams, but I would say Washington isn't the greatest team, not going to make the playoffs this year. And we have new pieces, still settling in. Dwayne Brown there at left tackle is a new addition, hasn't played with Luke Joke over there on the left side yet of that offensive line. And this is, Pete was talking about, this is the first week that they've got to practice together, create some continuity. And, on the other side of the ball, Shaq Griffin is finally back with Jeremy Lane and some of the other guys that, make up that secondary. So there's still moving pieces here and there, continuing to get better, continuing to gel. And so I think as the season progresses, especially against, like you said, the meat of our schedule, a lot of good teams coming up, the Rams coming back up, Jacksonville. But, I think for this game in particular, it's kind of going to be, I think the Seahawks are favored because of the inexperience of Carson Wentz. And the Eagles, they may be, I don't want to say more talented, but from top to bottom, they're healthier. They have a lot more going for them, a lot more confidence heading into this game, I believe. That's why I would think the number 1 team in the NFL would have. But I think Carson coming into a hostile environment, a lot of teams talk about, Seattle and the crowd noise and things like that. The Falcons, Julio Jones even acknowledged that, going into Seattle is something different, the crowd noise. And if we can get our special teams and kicker to get on, our side and start making some field goals, things would be looking up for, Seattle. We could be one of those teams. We could be the team that, you're used to seeing that's sitting there at, 9-2, 10-1, 7-2-1, whatever it is. But, for right now, we still have some kinks that we need to work out. Luckily, the left side of that offensive line is starting to, iron itself out. The right side is going to get some work now. Abushi and, Afedi and everyone hopefully will start playing better. And, once guys get more settled into their position, I think that, with how dominant and how good the offense looks right now, it's going to look even better, especially with Russ playing the way that he's playing, to add some important guys on the line that know what they're doing and are good at what they're doing is going to be, amazing for the second or this last quarter of the season. Guys like Tanner McAvoy are getting more involved in the passing game is looking good. So hopefully Jimmy and Doug and all of those guys can step up and, maybe Tyler Lockett will find the end zone this game. We'll see. But what do you expect from the offense this game?
I think the offense we're going to see a little bit the same as usual. I'm more excited. I think that they're even going to open it more up for Russ right now. I think that they understand even how drastic it is that we're going to have to rely on Russ, and we're starting this 5-game stretch. And I think that Pete's going to really try and heavily rely on him, and I think that'll pay off well. I expect Russ to have another great game, and this could even become another shootout like we have with the Texans. And there's no one I'd rather have on my team who's going to lead us to victory than Russell Wilson, a guy who is just clutch every chance he gets to be clutch, and just makes great plays all the time. So, I expect the offense to move well. And I think a guy like Mike Davis, a guy like Tanner McAvoy, a guy like Luke Wilson, maybe, one of these third-tier guys that are still on the offense can still make plays. Is going to have a couple of big plays that are going to help this team win as well. I just find that there's always a unique Seahawk on the team who finds a way to step up in these big Sunday night games. So I expect more of the same with that, and just a great great overall showing for the offense, and no run game, of course. I don't expect Mike Davis to go off on the run game. I wouldn't say that. I will give the Eagles credit; they are one of the best defenses in the league as well. So. That's why it's a tough matchup. Is it both sides? You're going to have to play tough. But every game the Seahawks go into, I always think they have a chance. And if you look at every game that they play, they put themselves in position to have a chance. And with that being said, at the end of the day, I trust Russell Wilson to make those plays in order to get us to victory. So the offense will play well, and will be the catalyst to the great day.
I agree with you. Primetime games is when Russ really shows up. It's the reason that the Seahawks weren't getting a lot of primetime games a couple years back when they were, in the Super Bowl and contended for a Super Bowl the year after. Is the teams or the ratings were down because the games were boring. Seattle would blow them out, and it wasn't really a blowout last year when the Seahawks beat Philly when they came into Seattle, but it wasn't as impressive as some would have thought. And Russ is looking like he'll be like that again. And I think the Eagles kind of expect him to be like that. I was watching some of the interviews from the Eagles players, and, their front seven from Brandon Graham. He said that they've been using a wide receiver as their, practice dummy quarterback to emulate Russ, and then had high praise for Russ, said that there's only one Russell Wilson. You can't prepare for something that, you don't know. You don't know, when Russ is going to use his spin moves or a stiff arm, or, he has such a high arsenal back there under center. It's impossible, and it's amazing to watch. It's something that we get to watch week after week, and Philly, they have to prepare for that. Fortunately for the Seahawks, Carson Wentz doesn't run the same as Russell Wilson. Nobody does, but he's good in his own right. He's a strong quarterback. And Bobby's looking forward to it. The one thing Bobby said a lot of good things about Carson Wentz, but the one thing that stood out is that he said Carson likes to run you over. So Bobby said that he hopes that he gets the opportunity to meet Carson Wentz and see how that goes down. So that's going to be exciting. I'm excited.
Like that.
I'm excited to see if Carson slides or if he tries to run over Bobby Wagner. I think it'll be a highlight on whatever sports network you may be watching, and it's going to be fun. I'm excited. I think, with the high praise from the, Brandon Graham, who's a very, very good defensive player for Philadelphia, talking about Russell Wilson being, in a league of his own is amazing. And Russ, when speaking about Carson Wentz, he brought up a good point too. He said, when you're an NFL quarterback, the season is a lot longer than you would see in college. And Carson, while I have no doubt that he's going to be a quarterback in this league for a long time, he's a really good quarterback. But it is a long season. He's unproven. He hasn't really seen the playoffs, and they haven't really played that many good teams this year. He has an impressive win at Carolina. I will give him that. Played well on the road. dominated. It was all him that won that game. But it's a long season, and for a guy that's 7 years in the league as Russell Wilson, he would know. One of those speed bumps comes along the road. You play one of those teams that is peppered with seasoned veterans throughout, a perennial playoff team that plays hard, has the home crowd for their side, and you're only in year 2. So the Eagles obviously looking promising. Was sitting at 10-1. Their only loss came early on in the season to a streaking Chiefs team. But coming into Seattle is going to be a difficult environment, and I think with the way Russ plays in prime time, and with everything Seattle has to play for, they keep getting healthier. Like you said, run game is going to be, until they prove that they can do something. I can't believe that they will do anything. It doesn't really matter who they start. I think they've been kind of quiet on if it's going to be Lacey or Rawls or Mike Davis, but I really don't think anybody cares. It's not going to be a huge factor, and I think that goes for both sides of the ball. I think that the Eagles won't run over teams like they have been recently. A lot of people are talking about how they've been playing so well. They've also been playing the Bears and the Cowboys, who haven't been playing so well, although they won this last Thursday. And the Cardinals, teams that aren't really going anywhere. They're blowing out. So it is what you want to do against teams that aren't going anywhere. You do want to be in the position where you're blowing teams that are mediocre at best out, and it's what the Eagles are doing. So I expect it to be an exciting game, but I think this is one of those games where the stars are really going to shine, and I can't think of a star that's brighter than Russell Wilson right now in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great matchup, even quarterbacks wise, right? Probably just the two guys competing for that MVP spot right now. I will say the one thing I always like about Russ is I think that regardless, even if he weren't to play quarterback, I think he's one of those guys, and the Seahawks have a lot of these guys who are just great football players. They just love the game of football. He could be a running back, he could be a receiver, he could be a corner, he could be a safety, he could be a line. They just love the game of football. I think you could say the same thing about Bobby Wagner on the other side of football. He could play a lot of different positions, has the body type too. Earl, Cam, all these guys are just big guys, are athletic and just master their one craft. They'll find the perfect position to put them in and just let them strive there. Even with Sherm played a receiver for his first couple of years at Stanford and then switched to corner. So just guys who can play all around on the football field, and I think that's going to show. And that does show in big games like this, because that's when it really just comes down to football. It's just two great teams, and you just got to play. So I think it'll be another great performance, another great show in Clink, or Seahawks Stadium, as I always like to refer to it. And it should be a great matchup.
You're right. So before we get going, I have to ask you. I'll let you think about it for a second. What is your prediction from this game? What do you think the final score will be? And in particular, what do you think will be a major factor? And I mean that, like, do you think the Seahawks will be perfect with their special teams? Blair Walsh will make all his kicks. It won't come down to him missing kicks and, maybe potentially losing games like he has been basically his whole career, even in college. Or you think it'll be, Russ coming down to his 2-minute drill and, finding Doug Baldwin in the corner of the end zone on a trick play written up by Bevel? Or, what do you think is going to happen in this game, and what's the score?
All right, so we're going to go. I think that on the defensive side of the ball, I think Bobby continues to shine. And I think that the defense makes a couple of big plays against Wentz, whether it's like a strip fumble or a pick, or I think at the end of the game, they're going to find a way to get to Wentz. Wentz may even have a good day. We could say Wentz may put up some nice stats throughout the day, but I think there's going to be crucial moments that the defense will step up and make the needed play. And I think on the offensive side of the ball, of course, Russell Wilson is gonna be there all day long, and I think that Paul Richardson is ready to have another good game. He's a guy who just at any time could just blow up and go for 110 and a couple of touchdowns, I feel like. And I feel like this may be a good day for him to do that. And I think the final score that we got this week is a nice 34-10 for the Seahawks.
Wow, you're going blowout.
We going, yes. I think that we're actually gonna make a lot of great plays all over the field. I don't see actually them competing too much. I think it could be a close game at halftime, something like 10-14, maybe 7-10, something like that. And I think in the second half, they just blow them out. I think that I think our defense can shut down their offense. And I think that our offense at this point, Russ has the ability to just let it go. So I'm excited for a good blowout this week.
Wow. I don't think I'm going blowout. I think it'll be a close one. I think my player of the game, I'm going Doug Baldwin offensively. But I think, if you think back to the beginning of the season, there was a lot of defensive stands and the offense was kind of stagnant. And then I think the turning point was that Texans game where the offense was just outstanding. The defense they couldn't stop Deshaun, and then Russ hits you with the little flute playing game winner. And I think once Russ started playing the flute, it's been a wrap, and the offense has really taken off. So while I could see where you're coming from, the Eagles' offense is not particularly overly impressive. They've been able to, spread the ball around, touchdowns. Zach Ertz, Nelson Aguilar, and Alshon Jeffrey are all seven touchdowns. I think Aguilar has 6, but the run game just not particularly overly impressive. I don't see Jay Ajayi or LeGarrette Blount rushing for 100 plus or whatever they've been doing recently in recent weeks. But so I could see that, but I think defensively it's going to be Earl or Shaq Griffin. I think one of the DBs. I think that they're tired of people talking about the LOB disappearing. I think that nobody has really taken off on this secondary, the LOB. DeAndre Hopkins did have a great game. I will give DeAndre, I think he's one of the best in the game. He had like 220 yards or something crazy like that. And even the old man there in Arizona went over the 100-yard mark, Larry Fitz. But Julio was held in check, and some, Marquise Goodwin was also held in check. Both barely reached the 70-yard mark. So the defense is looking good, especially with all the injuries that it's been dealing with. Even I don't want to put the guys down, but the lesser names than Sherman, Shaq Griffin finally coming back, Deshaun Shedd, another guy that's on the mend, will return to the team soon. So I think the LOB is gonna make their claim this week, and so we're not gone just yet. And led by the captain El Capitan, Earl Thomas, I think it's gonna be a big game for him defensively. So I'm gonna go 31-28, but the defense saves the day, probably with a pick. I think Russ handles his thing with the 2-minute drill, but then I think Carson will get one last chance, and maybe Earl will seal the deal for the Hawks there on Sunday Night Football.
Sounds like a great game. I'm excited to watch it.
All right, man. Me too, man. Me too. All right, man. That's about it. Tomorrow we'll hit y'all with some graphic for the game, and definitely check this out. We'll be back next week to talk about Jacksonville, and hopefully they won't be on the slide. I know they lost last week, but hopefully they can get back on the horse and head back into the playoffs. So we shall see y'all next week. I'm your boy Corey Sullivan over there, my man
Austin Lersten. Peace.